Namaste, everyone. Here I am, Kushi. Today we will be focusing on mudra, right? Mudras are a very unique system in our study of yoga. And actually, we don't have enough time, but really, just as long as you spend studying asana is really how long we need to spend studying mudra, right? So today is just a very light dose of what is mudra, introduction to their power and potential, and some commonly used mudras, and maybe some new mudras for you that might be helpful in your personal practice and when serving your clients in the future. All right, so let's have a look and see what we have for today. So as you can see already, we have these hand gestures, right, that denote certain feelings, certain intention in the practice or in the meditative state. And generally, you might have seen them in certain statuary or iconography of different Eastern gods and goddesses, right? Especially in the Hindu and Buddhist traditions. Now, if you watch the lecture on bandhas, you remember that bandhas fall under the category of mudras, right? And for our purposes today, we will be talking about the first category, not the second category of the body-based, bandha-based mudras. The first category was the bhava-based mudras, right? The mudras that really affect mind and emotions, right? That have to do with specifically our hands. There are other mudras as well in different traditions, especially the dance tradition, which uses the eyes as well to give certain feeling and energy, as you know, right? When you're angry or when you're happy or when you're surprised, right? Your eyes do many different things. Now, the bhava-based hand gestures that we will be studying today are mudras related to both meditative states and also for therapeutic effects as well. So if you've ever been to India and you've ever flown into the New Delhi airport, you're greeted by this enormous sculpture, hanging sculpture of different hand gestures or mudras, right? It's very beautiful, actually. Now, this word mudra, right, comes from two roots. Mud, which is to impart bliss, happiness, joy, pleasure, or ananda, right? And dru, to draw out, right? Dra, you might recognize this root from nidra, right? To draw out the state of the void in our yoga nidra practices, for example. Right, so we're drawing out by using these hand gestures. We're drawing out bliss, drawing out happiness, pleasure, etc., from our system. Right. Also, as you know, it's a seal, it's a gesture, a lock, a symbol, even a posture. Right. So if we're drawing out happiness and bliss, it really helps us to tap into this Anandamaya kosha, right? The innermost sheath, right? That is closest to the reality of the self. And by practicing mudra, it's a very esoteric and very deep practice. So we shouldn't just take it lightly, like we're just doing some hand gestures, right? Just like in any asana, we can go from the physical directly to experience of the self, depending on our readiness and depending on our karmas and depending on so many factors, right? We can also, with mudra, access this bliss through the divine powers of the hands themselves, right? Each finger has a certain electromagnetic current that is connected to not only different physical organs and physical parts of our body, but also the entire pranic system of the nadis. This is the non-verbal mode of communication, right? Of our hands, face, and body posture. So when we are non-verbally communicating, you can really understand non-verbal cues are often much more profound and stronger than our verbal cues. And so mudra gives us that power of non-verbal communication. The ancient yogic rishis, or the sages, right, through their meditative practices, discovered that the mudras change not only breathing practices or patterns, right? So when you do a mudra, without even intending to change your breathing might change, right? Might go deeper, might be more diaphragmatic, might extend the exhalation, might suspend the breath, right? And not only that, is that these mudras direct prana to various parts of the body via nadis, balancing your energy, right, homeostatically. And not only that, regulating any imbalance in the nadis and organs, and tonifying deficiencies and sealing excess, right? So it's all about homeostasis here. The origin and history of mudra, earliest recorded knowledge, is found in the mantra shastras, right? These books of incantations or mantras, which I'll talk about in the other lecture. Upasana Shastra, the book of worship and prayers, and Nritya Shastra, the book of classical dances, right? So a lot has to do with mantra, prayer, devotion, and dance. This is really where we see in very, thousands of years ago, these evidence of mudra and the knowledge of specifically these hand gestures. Mudras are not only, limited to the yogic tradition, but in Christianity, when the priest is blessing devotee, they take on a certain mudra. The Muslim Sufi dervish dances, when they spin, they adopt certain mudras as they turn, right, in accordance to the turning of the wheel of life. The Egyptian deities also, if you see, there's a very vast similarity with a lot of their hand gestures and the hand gestures of the yogic tradition, and of course, Buddhism, right? Buddhism and yoga are just so interconnected that it's almost funny to separate them, right? Of course, in the yogic texts, we find evidence in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Shiva Samhita, Geranda Samhita, and lots of different tantric treatises which give more specified intention around these hand gestures, while the first three are about these bandha-based mudras, right? So the benefits of why we use mudras is first and foremost for our physical health, our Anandamaya kosha, right? The physical quality of bringing balance to our internal organs by redirecting the flow of prana, and by not only bringing balance, but balance in the sense of, creating, either bringing up energy in certain organs or parts of the body which have low energy or low pranic flow, or reducing the energy or cleansing or tonifying where perhaps there's too much inflammation, right? There's too much prana, and using the mudras for balancing these effects is very effective. Intellectual acuity, so sharpening memory, sharpening mind retention, right? Oftentimes in the Vedic times, students would adopt mudras as they remembered and recited the Vedas and recited mantras, right? Remember, it's an oral tradition, so mudras were used for smriti sadhana, to remember, to recall. To enhance our energy field, right? Our pranic field, or otherwise known as in common language, aura, right? Expansion of consciousness. So taking ourselves out of the day-to-day, the moment we lock the hands in a mudra, it changes our mind and mental state. And that mind and mental state moves away from the push and pull of the pairs of opposites around us and moves more into the qualities of meditative states of absorption. Acquisition of siddhis, that should be siddhis, right? Siddhis are these yogic powers, right, that we get from doing our practice and purifying our mind. Of course, stability and stillness, and balancing the elements, right? So these three basic effects of the mudras, remember, balancing, reducing or minimizing energy where it's in excess, right? Cleansing or tonifying where perhaps energy is low or needs attention. So how to practice, right? What are the kind of basic parameters for our practice? Timing is important. Of course, in yogic tradition, morning and evening are the best time. They represent the sandhyas, or the meeting of light and dark and light, right? In the universal atmosphere. Done on an empty stomach, just like we do our asana, pranayama, meditative practices, better that your stomach is relatively empty, and can be done in conjunction with the practice that you're already doing, right? Let's say you're doing an asana practice and you do pranayama, or you do a meditation, right? The mudra can be part and parcel of when you come into a still moment, either right in the beginning, right, as a sense of intention for the practice, or at the end to hold a certain mudra for a specific purpose. How long should you practice the mudras? Generally, it takes about 30 seconds to create that electromagnetic current, right? Once you hold the mudra. And then to promote its effect, right, recommended anywhere from 2 minutes to 10 minutes, right? Like I said, it can be done as part of your meditation practice. Body posture. So Sukhasana, Siddhasana, Padmasana, Maitrasana. Maitrasana is just, a relaxed posture sitting in a chair. Vajrasana, right? I hope you know what all of these postures are. If not, you can look them up, right? So all of these are conducive, and you can see they're all meditative postures. So obviously the meditative postures are the ones that, really invoke the essence of the mudras and promote the energy up the spine. Some mudras you can also do lying down. That's no problem. How much pressure to apply? So just enough till you feel, right, light touch, till you feel that little pulsation or sensation between the nerve endings of the 2 fingers or 3 fingers, depending on what the mudra is, right? So you don't want to press too hard, because mudra, remember, is about moving into the subtle realm. So the more subtly you press, the more subtle your mind becomes. Breathing, to maintain a steady rhythmic pace of breath is helpful. So diaphragmatic breathing, samavritti, vishamavritti, that means even ratio or longer exhalation, is often conducive to mudra practice, and one may come before the other. Perhaps doing the mudra enhances the quality of your breathing, or you're already breathing deep, and then the mudra has a deepening effect in the body because of the slow rate of your breath rate. So here we have, if you look at your 5 fingers, you can see, according to your pranamaya kosha, your subtle body system, right? We have the essence of the chakras. And remember, the chakras are related to not just the emotive states or transformation of emotions and qualities of your personality, but really the 5 elements, right? So really focus on the chakras in terms of the 5 elements and the qualities of the 5 elements. So each of these 5 elements have a specific placement, right? According to the finger. So, you're starting with the earth element in your ring finger, then water, then fire, then air, and ether, right? So depending on what the thumb touches, you can start to stimulate different elements this way, right? And of course, the same correspondence goes with the chakras, right? Earth is related to your ring finger. Your water is related to your pinky finger, right? Earth is your Muladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata, and Vishuddhi chakra, right? So you have the 5 main chakras here, and then the subtle chakras above them. And also in correspondence and further study, you can also find that your mudras affect the vayus. So these are things you can start to study, beyond this lecture. If you study this lecture and you say, wow, mudra is so interesting, there's way more and beyond. I'm giving you maybe like 2% of what mudra is. And so know that the main effect is really of this balancing of the elements, balancing of the chakras, balancing of the vayus, right? We can do all of that with just our 5 fingers. It's quite amazing. So let's take a look at some mudras that are related to meditation, right? Meditative hand mudras. So first here, this is Indu Aurora. She is a very wonderful yoga teacher, and all of the photos are taken from her book, Mudra, right? So another, further study for you, but mudras are always best learned through a teacher, not a book, right? So if you can, take a training and learn deeper, because there's some subtleties that you might not be able to catch, right? If you try to learn from a book versus with a live or online teacher. So the first is that we're going to take a look at is Abhaya Mudra. Abhaya, Abhaya. Abhaya means to be fearless, right? I really love this mudra, right? We see this mudra a lot in the Buddhist tradition, in the Buddha himself, or different bodhisattvas or different deities doing this mudra, right? So your right hand is the hand that goes up, and the left hand points down, right, at the level of the knee, right? So we have this seal of fearlessness and reassurance, right? One hand is welcoming while one hand is saying stop, right? To all negative forces that may want to destroy your practice or create disturbance in your mind, right? These are internal and external forces. So it gives us this protection against negative forces that might create fear and resistance within our system. So the way in which we work with Abhaya Mudra is to contemplate and feel the nature of our fear as we take on this mudra and watch it transform into courage, right? Fear is a source of strength, can be a source of strength, has an energy, a pranic potency behind it. And learning to both welcome, the qualities of the energies of fear that might give us insight as to the root cause of what it is that we're feeling, right? So Abhaya Mudra, beautiful mudra for when you feel strong sense of fear, insecurity, or doubt within your system, right? And so we can practice this. Anjali Mudra, right? Of course, this is also called Namaskar Mudra or Namaste, right? This is Namaste. Anjali Mudra, mudra of love, offering, mudra of deep respect, and a mudra in which we can, by where we place it along the body, we can have a different connotation. So for example, when we do it at the level of the heart, it's a respect, it's a connection to ourselves, connection to others. So in South Asia, namaste, namaskar, right? This is a very common, we don't even often say namaste, we just do the mudra, and the mudra transmits the meaning, right? And so namaste is of course also the greeting, can also be a goodbye, all of these things to show our connection, heart-to-heart connection, right? When we do this Anjali Mudra at the level of the nostrils, it's the level of greeting, respect, devotion to prana, right? The prana that flows at the nostrils, namaskar to the pranic force. When we do it at the level of the third eye center, thumb knuckles to the third eye center, it's a namaste and Anjali Mudra towards the inner guru, the teacher, right? And when we do at the top of the head, it's the namaste or namaskar to the universal forces that guide and govern our lives, right? And then when we do in full prostration, for example, in a traditional Surya Namaskara, you lay completely down flat on your abdomen and you extend the arms out and you have, the palms together in Anjali Mudra. That is Namaskar to Surya, the sun, right? And the essence of the sun. So you see this a lot in a lot of the postures that you do as well. Right. So when we bring, look, all the 5 tips of the fingers together, and we have that closed energy circuit between all of the elements, right? Pure love, pure devotion, pure harmony. Another very commonly used mudra is Chin Mudra or Jnana Mudra. Chin Mudra or Jnana Mudra, right? Very subtle difference. Chin Mudra is done face down and Jnana Mudra is done face up. That's the only difference, right? At the knees or level of the thighs. Done by a light touch of the thumb and the pointer finger together, or even at the nail, right? So you can either touch the tips of the fingers or just right at the nail. And then the other 3 fingers are relatively relaxed, right? So this Chin Mudra is this, when it's face down, it's the mudra of this ultimate realization. And Jnana Mudra is a mudra of receiving wisdom, right? Each of these fingers have a different representation. Your thumb is a representation of the Supreme Soul, Paramatma. The index finger, the individual soul, Jivatma. The middle finger, right, is the representation of ego, Ahankara. The ring finger is a representation of illusion or Maya, and the little finger of all your karmas, right, of karma and the law of cause and effect that governs this universe. And all of these together also represent Om. So the symbol of Om is here in the 5 fingers when we take on Chin Mudra or Jnana Mudra, right? Jnana Mudra, when we do Jnana Mudra specifically, if palms face up at the lap, it redirects the energy by closing the circuit here, redirects the energy back into the body, right? And both of these mudras, right, when we're talking about ultimate realization, what are we realizing? That I am beyond the states of formed existence. I am beyond sattva, rajas, tamas, the 3 gunas. I am beyond vata, pitta, kapha, right, the 3 doshas of Ayurveda. I am beyond duality, even Purusha and Prakriti, right? Shiva and Shakti, the masculine, feminine, lunar and solar, Ida, Pingala. I'm even beyond that, right? So even beyond any sense of separation, any sense of name and form, right? This is what Chin or Jnana Mudra help us to feel. So the Chin Mudra, when we have the hands face down, helps in more balancing and grounding effect, while Jnana Mudra is a sense of receptivity inwards. And I'm sure a lot of you already practice this mudra a lot in your either meditative posture or in some of the, asanas as well. Dhyana Mudra. Dhyani or Dhyana, right? Dhyani, Dhyana. Dhyana or Dhyani, Dhyan means meditation, right? Dhyana being the, one of the upper limbs towards the, samadhi, moving towards samadhi, the 7th limb. Again, gesture of meditation and peace, right? And a very beautiful mudra for when your meditative practice, when you're sitting in meditation, and just an establishment in yourself, right? It's done at the level of the navel and usually done with the right hand on top of the left and the 2 thumbs touching in a relaxed way, right? Either pointing up or pointing forward, right? And then just having the sides of the pinkies at the level of the navel, elbows slightly bent, relaxed, open underneath the armpits, right? And this creates this beautiful circuit between the left and right hemispheres of the brain, right? The Ida and Pingala principle calms the nervous system and makes the breath more subtle or suksham, right? As you know, when the energy of prana flows out of the Ida and out of the Pingala into Sushumna, into the central nadi, right? That's when the mind calms down and the vrittis, the thought fluctuations, already calm down as well. And we can start to contemplate who we truly are beyond our thoughts, beyond our emotions, beyond our titles and privileges, right? This is a very common, again, mudra that you see in a lot of deities, a lot of iconography, all throughout the yogic, Hindu, Buddhist traditions. And again, it's really a wonderful mudra for promoting tranquility in your meditation. We're going to look at two other mudras that are done in, not exactly in your meditative practice, but around getting towards your meditative practice, right? The first one is called Shanmukhi mudra. Shanmukhi mudra. Shan means 6 and Mukhi means face. And Shanmukhi mudra is a pratyahara practice. Pratyahara, if you remember, comes after asana in the 8 limbs of yoga, and it's about withdrawing the senses. By withdrawing the senses, we nourish the senses, right? And Shavasana is another example of withdrawing the senses, closing the eyes and, shutting down, going inwards, pulling the senses back to their source. Shanmukhi mudra is a literal closing of the senses, the 6 gates, right? 2 eyes, 2 ears, nose, and mouth. So it's done by taking the thumbs into the ears, right? And plugging the ears, but make sure you can hear the instructions before you plug the ears. The next 2 fingers lightly over the closed eyes, the ring fingers towards the sides of the nostrils, not closing the nostrils, but just at the nostril tips, and the pinky fingers at the corners of the mouth. Right, the elbows will come up in line with the shoulders, right, to promote healthy lung activity and openness in the chest region, also a lift in the thoracic spine. And then holding the mudra anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes is advised, right? It's often done after a pranayama practice and before meditation, right? But it can also be done in accordance with Brahmari pranayama. So Brahmari, you remember, is the bee's breath. When we close the sense doors, we can really hear that internal humming, internal vibration, and then we focus on the silence afterwards, right? If you're doing it without the sound of Brahmari, the cue is to bring your mind to the source of prana, deep in the heart center, and listen to the inner sound of your breathing, right? The inner nada, the music of your breath, right? Generally, again, 1 to 5 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes is a good amount of time for Shanmukhi mudra after pranayama or during Brahmari, then taking the hands down and continuing on for your meditative practice, however long that might be. It's a wonderful practice, actually, and highly recommend to incorporate it. After Shavasana, you come to sit up, you do some pranayama practice, you do Shanmukhi mudra, you sit for a minute or 2 in meditation or longer, and you'll find a marked difference in your energy. Vishnu mudra, Vishnu mudra, right, is the hand gesture of Lord Vishnu, the sustainer of the universe or sustaining energy of the universe, right? Remember, we're talking about deities as energies, energy patterns in our system. So done by folding down the air and ether fingers, right? And keeping the earth, water, and fire fingers flowing freely, right? So we harness the power of air and ether, and we keep the other 3 elements open. You'll see this a lot for different Nadi Shodhanam practices, Anuloma Viloma practices, or, anything having to do with the nostrils. And when we use it in terms of the pranayama specifically, it's very important we know where we're pressing. There's a very certain marma point or pressure point at the ethanoid bone. So the bony part of the nostril, right, where it ends, that's the ethanoid bone. So we're not closing at the base of the nostrils here. That can cause congestion, but very light pressure. We're actually not even closing the nostril fully. It's a very light pressure to close one nostril or the other so that your mind can be more subtle. The breath has to be more subtle if the mind is to be more subtle, right? So this is Vishnu Mudra. And you can do with either hand, whichever hand is your dominant hand, right? That's the hand that you'll use for Vishnu Mudra. The other hand can come lightly down onto the lap in Chin Mudra or Jnana Mudra, face up or face down, right? And keeping that focus, right, in the nostrils. So it, by harnessing the energy of air and ether, we're harnessing the energy of prana. So we're, taking our mind away from physical breathing, like the physical sensation of breath, and allowing our minds to feel the subtle pulsation, vibration, or energy that pushes the breath, that motivates the breath, known as prana itself. The next mudra is called Sankalpa Mudra. Sankalpa, you may have heard this word. When we set a Sankalpa, it's actually stronger. It's not, people say setting intentions, but it's really like 1,000 times stronger than intention, right? It's a powerful resolve. It's with all of your energy, all of your focus, all of your prana. You are making a promise to yourself and the universe for an intended goal, right? That I will do my sadhana for this amount of time. I will sit in meditation for this amount of time, or whatever it is that you have a strong intention towards. So the Sankalpa Mudra marks the beginning of these auspicious activities. You're taking on, a certain vow within yourself. And to do that, right, to seal the vow, we take on the Sankalpa Mudra, which you can see here. It's done at the level of the heart, right? So we hold it at the level of the heart. And when you know what your Sankalpa is, you state it out loud while sealing it with the mudra itself, right? And what this does, it helps you to invoke a little bit more clarity, purity, self-confidence, all of which are necessary for reaching your intended goal, right? So the Sankalpa Mudra can help that. And even if you don't have like a Sankalpa related to a period of practice, like a sadhana, 40 days, 21 days, you can do this in the beginning of every session that you're sitting down for your own personal practice, right? I'm giving myself completely to the stream of yoga and the lineage of yoga and the lineage of all the teachers who are present with me and have been present with me and will be present with me, right? And so you mark a certain resolve and a certain power in and sanctity around your practice. So these were all of these kind of mudras related to more meditative practices or meditative approaches to what, very yogic in the sense, because when we're practicing Raja Yoga, right, the yoga of Patanjali, we're moving towards those meditative limbs. And there are just a huge host of mudras that are used for therapeutic effects for our body, right, and our system, which I'll just give you a little briefing on, and you can try them, and see if it's true, right? The best way to study yoga is experiential practice, and one has to practice to experience, right? So let's look at these therapeutic hand mudras. The first one that we're going to look at is Ganesh Mudra, Ganesha, right? Ganesha, as you know, is the deity or energy related to obstacles, right? Either removing obstacles or even placing obstacles when we need to learn something in our lives, right? That energy places and removes obstacles to give us that fortitude and strength, right? This mudra specifically, right, is done at the level of the heart, right? And can really is a vigorous mudra because it's not a light hold of the fingers, but what we do is we'll hold the hands at the level of the heart or at the level of the gut, right? Depending on what we want to stimulate. The mudra is related also to the fire element, right? So as you exhale, you pull the fingers apart, and then as you inhale, you release the tension, right? Keeping the shoulders relaxed. And the Ganesha mudra stimulates heart activity, opening the bronchial tubes of the lungs, related to the fourth chakra of enhancing courage, confidence, and openness to situations in life, maybe experience in life, maybe people. Certain people you don't want to be very open to, or you feel resistance. And so you can have that courage and confidence that you can be in the presence of these situations in life and you can manage them, handle them. It also releases, because of its relationship with the fire element, right, releases abdominal discomfort. So there's a lot of different techniques around it, but one of the techniques is as you exhale, pull vigorously, and as you inhale, release all tension. You repeat this 6 times, and then you switch, right? Which hand is on top, right? And you do the same thing. So it's not a mudra that you hold like you would hold in a meditative practice. Garuda mudra. Garuda is the vahan or the vehicle of Lord Vishnu, the eagle. Garudasana, right, that we practice, eagle pose. And it's done very much, you know this very well, right? Right hand on top of left hand. And you see you have this, you hook the thumbs and you have the eagle flying here. And it's done with 10 breaths at each, the lower abdomen, the navel or the belly button, the upper abdomen, and then at the sternum, right? With your hands laying on the body at each of these points. And you can practice, anywhere from 5 to 10 breaths, feeling the invigoration at these points. Garuda mudra is done for immunity, right? So it's a mudra for enhancing blood flow and circulation, enhancing the lymphatic drainage and blood flow and circulation of your organs, and also managing exhaustion and mood fluctuations. Because it increases energy and blood flow, we have to be careful not to practice if you have high BP, right? Blood pressure. So you can try that. It's also one of my favorite mudras and really feels really wonderful when we practice that. Kshepana. Kshepana mudra is a mudra that is the mudra. Kshepana means to let go, right? And to release. And you can see, it's pushing the energy out through the index fingers, right? So you have all other fingers crossed, index fingers together, and the thumbs crossed on top. So when you do the technique, when you're seated in a seated pose, you point the index fingers generally to the ground because you're releasing back to the earth, right? Whatever it is that you're wishing to let go of, you can imagine it, visualize it, and feel it coming down through the coursing of the arms and out the middle fingers. When you're lying down, you can point it in the direction of the feet, right? Sometimes we see this in asana a lot, especially in Anjaneyasana or the warrior series, right? We're having it above the head and we're using it as a way of stretching the upper spine region. But it can be a way of reception as well, right? When we're pointing it upwards, we're receiving from the universal source. So if we're pointing downwards, right, this is the benefit of stimulating elimination, or this process of apanavayu, letting go, and connecting one with the ambrosia of immortality, right? So Kshepana mudra. Right, these are all for you. Just there's so many mudras, and I really just had to choose a few of these therapeutic mudras just so you can feel. Perhaps you can practice at home. And when you practice, if you're trying out mudras, again, you can learn from a teacher. And if you're practicing experimenting with mudras, at least give the mudra, a couple of weeks. It's not a quick change. It can be, but not always. So, to be consistent in the practice of mudras, if you are practicing one mudra at a time over the course of 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then you can try another one after that. But don't confuse your system by practicing a ton of mudras and then not knowing what you just did. All right, the next mudra is the tse mudra. Tse. This mudra is done with your fists, right? So all very simple, fold the thumb in and then cover the fingers over the fist, right? And then have the fist face up. This mudra is for reducing tamas guna. Tamas, if you remember, is the guna related to the characteristic of the universe related to exhaustion, sloth, inertia, low energy, deep stability, also deep sleep. Nothing negative about it, except when it goes out of balance, we might feel unmotivated to do anything, right? Or bored in general. Or when it moves into an extreme, we call that depression, which can be a state or a stage of our mind that is either longer held or moves in fluctuations, right? So this tse mudra, when we fold the fire element in like this, it awakens the Pingala Nadi, it awakens the more fiery solar energy, and that is what transforms tamas into sattva, right? Releasing repressed emotions and strengthening the digestive system, right? Having the fist face up on the knees, and then feeling that it has a very powerful effect. If you just do that, you can already feel a lot of energy coursing in the arms, and just a sense of, whenever we have the hands and fists, there's a sense of power involved, right? Usually we use that power for negative purposes, but we can reclaim that power for something positive in our system. Yeah. Okay. So these are, a variety of mudras for you to study, to practice. Like I said, so hard to capture it in such a short period of time. And it requires a lifetime of learning for sure, but at least in your meditative practice, when you go into sit in stillness, you can adopt a mudra. And then these therapeutic mudras can be there for you, later on, or if you're having any of these things going on, they might be useful for you right now. So thank you so much. And I hope this benefits you. Again, further study and sources, Mudra Sacred Secret by Indu Arora, really the most comprehensive and clear and appropriate, right? Culturally appropriate book written by a South Asian practitioner that I would recommend for you. Okay, take care, everyone. And I hope this was helpful. Any questions, you can reach out to me on Mudras.